A black woman in her mid-30s, dressed in a simple but neat navy blue dress, her hair tied back, her eyes steady yet filled with a quiet hope. Maya wasn't rich, but she had saved for months to finally treat herself at this very restaurant. She had read about it online, scrolled through pictures of smiling diners, and promised herself that one day, she too would step inside and taste the experience she'd only ever dreamed of. Tonight was supposed to be that night. Her heart raced with anticipation as she walked toward the glass doors. But just as her hand reached for the handle, a tall man in a crisp suit stepped in front of her. He was the restaurant manager, his arms crossed, his expression stern, almost rehearsed. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said firmly, his tone clipped. "I'm afraid this place is not for you." Maya blinked, stunned. "I'm sorry? I have a reservation. The name is Maya Jackson." The manager's lips curled into a smirk, a small laugh escaping. "A reservation? Here? Look, I don't know how you got that idea, but this restaurant is for a very specific clientele. People who belong here." For a moment, the words didn't sink in. They floated in the air like smoke, heavy, suffocating. Maya pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. "I have the confirmation right here. The email says..." But the manager cut her off sharply, his voice loud enough to draw the attention of those standing nearby. "I don't care what email you have. We can't let just anyone walk in. This is an establishment of class. People like you? Well, you're usually the ones serving the food, not eating it." The laughter of a couple passing by pricked her ears. Someone whispered behind her, "Did you hear what he just said?" Another person chuckled, but no one spoke up for her. Heat flushed Maya's cheeks. She could feel dozens of invisible eyes on her, judging, mocking, dissecting her worth. Her throat tightened, her chest burned. This wasn't the first time she had been reminded of her place. Memories from childhood rushed back. The teacher who once told her she would never fit in. The neighbors who looked at her mother with pity. The countless rejections at jobs where she was overqualified. And here she was again. A grown woman, successful in her own right, yet still being told she didn't belong. Her eyes watered, and she turned her face away quickly, not wanting them to see her cry. The tears betrayed her strength, rolling down silently anyway. The manager stood tall, smug, as though he had defended the honor of his restaurant by keeping her out. His words echoed in her ears. "People like you." The heavy glass doors behind him reflected her face. In that reflection, she saw both the woman she had become and the little girl who once promised herself she would never let the world break her. A narration seemed to whisper in the silence of her heart. Sometimes, a single door reminds you of the cages society builds around you. But not all locked doors mean you don't belong. Some doors simply haven't yet been taught to open. Maya stood frozen for a moment, torn between humiliation and the faint flicker of courage. The night was far from over. And though this door was closed, destiny had another waiting. Just beyond the insult, just beyond the pain. Maya stood there, her phone still in her hand, the email confirmation glowing on the screen. But the manager didn't even bother to look. His eyes slid past her as though she were invisible, as though her presence at the door was an inconvenience rather than a customer's right. "Ma'am," he said again, this time slower, condescending, like he was speaking to a child who didn't understand simple rules. "This establishment has standards. We don't just let anyone with an email walk inside. You understand, don't you?" The way he emphasized anyone cut deeper than any outright insult could. He didn't need to say more. His glance at her skin, her dress, her shoes, carried the rest of the message. Maya felt her fingers tighten around her phone. For a fleeting second, she imagined raising her voice, demanding her right. But the weight of the stairs around her pressed down like chains. A small group of guests waiting for valet service had turned to watch. A couple at the entrance whispered to each other, their eyes flicking toward Maya, then away with faint smirks. "She's probably lost," one of them muttered, loud enough for Maya to hear. Her throat burned. She wanted to shout, "I'm not lost. I belong here just as much as you do." But the words stuck inside her chest, tangled with years of swallowed injustice. The manager shifted his stance, his patience thinning. "Look, I don't want to make a scene. If you could step aside, please. You're blocking the entrance." That was the breaking point. The words blocking the entrance hit like a slap, as though her mere existence in that space was a disruption, an obstacle, a problem to be moved away. She stumbled back a few steps, nearly colliding with the marble pillar by the door. Her heart thudded painfully, and her face burned with shame. The city lights blurred as tears filled her eyes. She lowered her gaze, unwilling to meet the sneers and pity around her. A young couple walked past, brushing close to her. The woman clutched her partner's arm tighter, her eyes filled with a quiet superiority. "This is exactly why they should have stricter checks at the door," she whispered. Maya's ears rang. Every comment, every glance, every smirk piled onto her shoulders like stones. She turned and found a small stone bench near the entrance. Her knees wobbled as she sat down, clutching her purse in her lap. The laughter from inside the restaurant spilled through the glass doors, sharp and cruel against the silence she carried. In that moment, memories flooded back uninvited. She was 12 again, standing in the school cafeteria line when a teacher told her, "Honey, maybe you should try the cheaper lunch section. This one's for the honors students." She was 22, sitting in a job interview where the manager smiled and said, "You're bright, but you might not fit the culture here." She was 30, standing in line at a boutique when the cashier asked, "Are you sure you can afford this?" The sting was always the same. Different words, same wound. Tonight, the wound felt rawer than ever. Maya pressed a hand against her chest, trying to calm the storm inside. Her breaths came shallow, uneven. She whispered to herself, "I just wanted one night. One night to feel normal. To feel worthy." Her reflection in the restaurant's polished glass stared back at her. A strong woman, yes, but a woman who had been made to feel small again and again. The door loomed in that reflection, heavy, guarded, locked against her. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the humiliation, a spark of defiance flickered. A voice whispered inside her, "This is not the end. This is not all you are." And yet, sitting on that bench, with the laughter of strangers slicing through the night, the pain felt unbearable. Maya bowed her head, tears dripping onto her hands. For the world around her, she was just another outsider turned away. But for her, this was more than rejection. It was the reopening of every scar she had ever carried. The night wasn't finished. Fate wasn't done. A storm was brewing just beyond that closed door. The night carried on as if nothing had happened. Yet for Maya, every passing second at that bench stretched into eternity. The city lights twinkled around her, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses spilled out from the restaurant's tall windows. But she felt like she was sitting in a void, a space carved out by shame. Her shoulders curled inward, as though she could somehow make herself invisible. But invisibility was never her choice. It was something the world had often assigned to her. Tonight, however, she wasn't invisible. She was too visible. Every look, every smirk, every whisper confirmed it. She was on display, but not as a guest, as an example. The restaurant manager, still standing by the door, kept glancing at her. His posture was triumphant, as though he had won some private battle. His face bore that smug look of someone who believed he had upheld a sacred rule, keeping people like Maya out. A waiter approached him quietly, a young man no older than 20. "Sir," the waiter said softly, "I think she really did have a reservation. Shouldn't we check?" The manager snapped his head toward him, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Listen, son, you'll learn this business soon enough. People like her don't eat here. If we let one in, word will spread, and before you know it, this place won't feel exclusive anymore. Do you understand?" The waiter hesitated, his lips parting as if to protest. But then he caught the cold steel in the manager's eyes. He nodded quickly and retreated, his face pale. The exchange wasn't lost on Maya. She had heard every word. Her stomach tightened, the insult digging deeper. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Her worth, her humanity was being measured and dismissed in front of strangers. Maya's fingers clenched tightly around her purse. She wanted to stand up, to confront him, to tell him he was wrong. But what good would it do? She had spoken up before, in boardrooms, in classrooms, in streets, and so often her voice was dismissed as angry, dramatic, or overreacting. So she stayed seated, silent, with her heart screaming inside her chest. The manager turned back toward the entrance, smiling warmly as a wealthy couple approached. "Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Collins," he said with practiced charm. He held the door wide open, bowing slightly as they entered. The couple didn't even glance in Maya's direction, as though she were just another shadow on the sidewalk. The contrast burned her. To them she was less than nothing, but she wasn't nothing. Her mind drifted back to a promise she'd once made herself. After her father died, she had told herself she would never let the world walk over her again. She had clawed her way out of poverty, educated herself, worked tirelessly to build a life. Tonight was supposed to be her celebration of that fight. And here she was, being told she didn't belong. Maya inhaled shakily. Maybe she could leave. Maybe she could just walk away, find a diner down the street, eat in peace and pretend this never happened. That was the safer choice. But something inside her resisted. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind, a memory from years ago. Baby, when they shut a door in your face, don't you dare shrink. Stand taller. One day the same door will beg for you to walk through it. Maya straightened her back, wiping her tears. The humiliation was still raw, but beneath it, that spark of defiance grew stronger. She stood up from the bench. The manager noticed immediately, raising an eyebrow. Still here? He said dryly, annoyance dripping from his tone. I thought I made myself clear. Maya met his eyes this time, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. I'm not leaving. I have a reservation and I intend to keep it. The manager chuckled, shaking his head. You're stubborn. I'll give you that. But you don't belong here, and nothing you say will change that. At that very moment, the sound of a sleek car engine purred to a stop at the entrance. Heads turned as a black luxury sedan pulled up. The valet rushed forward to open the door. Out stepped a tall man in an immaculate suit. Someone important, clearly. The manager's expression shifted instantly, from irritation to eager hospitality. He rushed forward. Mr. Anderson, welcome, sir, welcome. But the man's eyes weren't on the manager. They were on Maya. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by a wide smile. Maya Jackson, is that really you? The air shifted. The crowd, the manager, even Maya herself froze. The door that had been closed so tightly was about to open in a way no one expected. The crowd at the entrance went silent. The tall man who had just stepped out of the sleek black car exuded authority and wealth, the kind of presence that instantly commanded respect. His name was Mr. Anderson, a well-known business magnate in the city, a man whose face frequently appeared in magazines and on the covers of financial journals. The restaurant manager nearly tripped over his own feet in his rush to greet him. Mr. Anderson, what an honor, sir. Your table is ready. We've been expecting... But Anderson wasn't listening. His eyes had locked onto Maya, standing just a few feet away, her posture proud despite the humiliation she had endured moments earlier. His serious face broke into an expression of pure delight. Maya Jackson, he exclaimed, striding past the stunned manager. It's been years. What are you doing out here? The sound of her name, spoken with warmth and recognition, cut through the heavy air like a blade. Maya blinked, taken aback. Mr. Anderson, she said softly, almost unsure if she was imagining it. The manager's jaw dropped. He looked between the two of them, confusion flashing across his face. You know her? Know her? Anderson let out a hearty laugh. This woman changed my life. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. A valet who had been standing with keys in his hand nearly dropped them. The wealthy couple who had just entered paused at the door, curiosity pulling them back toward the scene. Maya's cheeks flushed, not from shame this time, but from the sudden weight of attention. She hadn't expected this moment. She hadn't planned for it. Anderson turned toward the manager, his smile fading into a sharp edge. Why is Maya standing out here? Why isn't she inside, at her table? The manager stammered, his earlier confidence evaporating. I thought, she didn't look like... Didn't look like what? Anderson's voice hardened. Didn't look like she belonged? Do you have any idea who this woman is? Maya swallowed hard. Part of her wanted to intervene, to stop the storm that was about to hit the manager. But another part of her, the part that had been bruised and battered by his words, wanted him to feel every ounce of the humiliation he had poured onto her. Anderson stepped closer to Maya, addressing the crowd as much as he was speaking to her. This woman is one of the most brilliant motivational speakers in the country. I attended one of her talks 5 years ago, when I was at the lowest point in my career. Her words gave me the courage to rebuild. She doesn't just belong in this restaurant. This restaurant should be honored to have her here. The silence that followed was thick with shock. Every pair of eyes that had mocked her minutes ago now shifted with discomfort, shame, and disbelief. The manager's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Maya, her heart pounding, finally spoke. Her voice was calm, steady, and carried more weight than any outburst could have. I came here tonight just to have a meal. That's all. But I was reminded that to some people, my skin, my dress, my presence are reasons to close doors. Tonight, I almost believed them. She glanced at Anderson, her eyes softening. But thank you for reminding me who I really am. The crowd shifted uneasily. The power dynamic had turned completely. Anderson turned back to the manager, his expression icy. If this is how you treat your guests, then maybe this establishment doesn't deserve people like me, or anyone with real dignity. The words hung in the air like thunder. The once smug manager now looked small, diminished, and exposed. For Maya, the door that had been slammed shut in her face minutes ago was suddenly wide open, not just to the restaurant but to the truth of her own strength. And yet, a question lingered in her mind. Did she even want to walk through it anymore? The air outside the restaurant was so still it felt as though time itself had paused. The once bustling chatter of the valet line, the laughter drifting from the entrance, all of it seemed muted, replaced by the weight of the moment. The restaurant manager's polished confidence had crumbled. Just minutes ago he had stood tall, smug, the gatekeeper of exclusivity. Now he was pale, beads of sweat glistening on his forehead as he struggled to reconcile the truth that had shattered his assumptions. "Mr. Anderson," he stammered, his voice unsteady, I didn't realize—" "That's the problem," Anderson cut him off sharply. "You didn't care to realize. You looked at Maya and saw only what you wanted to see. But what you missed is who she truly is." Anderson turned, his gaze sweeping across the crowd that had gathered. "Do you all know who this woman is?" Maya Jackson is a celebrated author and keynote speaker. She's written books that have changed lives. She's stood on stages in front of thousands, inspiring people who had lost hope. CEOs, students, parents, workers, people like me owe part of our success to her voice. And tonight, you wanted to deny her entry into a restaurant because of your own prejudice? The murmurs started then. Whispered recognition. A young woman pulled out her phone and whispered to her friend, "Oh my God, that's her. I watched her TED Talk last year." Someone else added, "She's been on the Times list. I read her book in college." Eyes that had mocked her minutes ago now widened with guilt. A few people looked down at their shoes, ashamed. Maya felt her throat tighten. Not with humiliation this time, but with an overwhelming mix of vindication and sorrow. She hadn't wanted this scene. She had wanted only a quiet dinner. Yet, in a way, this moment was larger than her, bigger than her own pain. It was about every person who had ever been told they didn't belong. The manager stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Ms. Jackson, please forgive me. I made a mistake. Of course, you are welcome here. Let me personally show you to your table." But Maya didn't move. She stood still, her eyes fixed on him, her silence louder than his pleas. Finally she spoke, her words measured and heavy. "You didn't just deny me a table," she said quietly. "You denied me dignity. You humiliated me in front of strangers. You made me feel small, not because I lacked a reservation, not because I lacked the means, but because of who I am. And you thought you had the right to decide my worth." Her words struck like arrows. The crowd shifted uneasily again, some nodding in agreement, others avoiding her gaze altogether. Anderson stepped closer to Maya, lowering his voice, though it still carried to those nearby. "You don't need to eat here tonight. Honestly, this place doesn't deserve you. But the world deserves to hear what just happened. They need to see how easily prejudice still hides behind a suit and a smile." Maya exhaled slowly, her heart pounding. For a brief second she imagined herself walking inside, sitting down, reclaiming the table she had been denied. But deep down, she knew victory wasn't about forcing her way past a door. It was about proving that no one, not a manager, not a restaurant, not society, had the power to define her value. She lifted her chin, her voice calm but resolute. "I don't want the table anymore. Tonight I've been reminded of something important. Real worth isn't given by a place like this. It's something you carry within you. And I don't need your permission to know mine." The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Anderson nodded, pride shining in his eyes. "Spoken like the Maya I remember." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "Let's go. I know a better place anyway." The manager looked crushed, his once commanding presence reduced to nothing. His pleas, "Please, Ms. Jackson, give us another chance," fell flat in the heavy silence. Maya turned her back to the gleaming glass doors. For the first time that night, she felt taller than the building itself. The door hadn't opened for her, but in that moment she realized she no longer needed it to.